Hello again. I'm coming to teach you guys a new lesson today for weather and climate, and we are going to be talking about weather fronts. So, to review, what we learned about for the last few lessons were air masses, and that air masses have different temperatures. They can be cold or warm, and they also have different levels of moisture. So, they could be what we call continental, which means it's a drier air mass, or they could be known as maritime, which means it is a wetter air mass. So, what we're going to be talking about today is what happens when you have one air mass that is moving along and it smashes into a different type of air mass. Whenever there's a location where two air masses meet each other, that is what is known as a weather front. Okay, whenever two air masses come together. And I'm going to show you guys on our map from last week. So imagine we talked about this air mass here coming down from the North Pole. It would be cold and it's coming across land, so it would be very dry. So if this air mass here, okay, is traveling this way, and down here as it's traveling, it comes into contact with an air mass that is moving up this way. This is going to be much warmer air, and this is going to be colder air. So these two air masses are going to meet there in the middle. And the place where they meet is known as a weather front. And so there are actually 4 different types of weather fronts, but for today we're going to talk about 2 different types. We're going to talk about cold fronts, and we're going to talk about warm fronts. So a cold front is called that because the air that is moving into the area is colder. And so the cold air moves in, and there's already a warm air mass there. And so we talked about this in our thermal energy unit. If you have cold air and you have warm air, one of those rises up, okay? The warm air always rises. So if an area is currently covered by a warm air mass and a cold air mass starts coming in, it is actually going to push the warm air up and out of the way because warm air rises. And then the location, wherever this is now going to have much colder air. And so you've experienced this before. We're kind of experiencing it right now that, one day it's 70, 80 degrees outside and it's really nice, and then all of a sudden you have a cold front move into the area and the temperature drops. It could just drop a little, or it could drop 30 degrees overnight and be much colder. So anytime that the cold air moves in, that's known as a cold front, and it slides up underneath the warm air, and the warm air is pushed up further into the atmosphere. Wherever that happens, all along the area where the two air masses are coming together, there is going to be thunderstorms, clouds, and precipitation. So at the beginning of a cold front, there is a weather event always. And it could be, if it's in the winter, it could be a snowstorm. If it's in spring, summer, it could be a thunderstorm, but it's going to be more of like a severe weather situation is usually at the place where you have a cold front, okay? Cold fronts on a weather map are represented by blue triangles. And to help you remember that, you can kind of think of it like little blue pointy icicles, okay? The other type of front we're going to talk about is a warm front. And so it's the opposite. It would be if it is colder somewhere and warm air moves into the area. Warm air is still going to slide on top, but what happens is you have this body of cold air, and as the warm air moves in and kind of slides on top, it shoves all that cold air out of the way. And so wherever that location is that had cold air is now replaced by that warm air. There's still going to be a weather event in the place where they come together, but for a warm front, it's less violent. It's more of like a light, steady rain instead of a storm situation. Warm front is going to be warm air moving into the area and pushing out the cold air. And a warm front on a weather map is represented by red circles, red half circles. Okay, so we're gonna practice, you guys are gonna fill in your notes along with this video about cold fronts and warm fronts. And then we'll do a little practice with those over the next couple days and talk about some of the weather events that will happen at those different locations. Okay, good job.